Greetings YouTube, the author Mark Simmons here. Thought I'd upload some extracts from the Psionic Powers Trilogy onto this channel, just to see how it goes really. And as it's Ep 1, I thought I'd start at the very beginning of the trilogy, and then we'll work my way through various extracts and chapters from each of the books. I considered rehearsing the reading through what I was going to do and what I'm doing now, but I thought, you know what, let's just do it off the cuff, be a bit more authentic, see how we get on. You know, it's my work. I should really know it, right? So yeah, enough rambling. Time to get into it. Today I'll be reading the very first chapter of the first book, which is Of the Night. It's available through Poe Boy Publishing on Amazon, and you can pick up a copy via the link in the description of this video. So hope you enjoy. So without further ado, I'm just going to read through an extract of chapter 1, which is called Beginnings. Consciousness returned with a swaying weightlessness that smothered all senses with the bliss of sleep. As coherence formed, a number of feelings came with it. Agony was the first sensation to stab through the euphoria. Nerve endings throbbing right down to the root of the jaw made their presence known. From there, the pain branched out to the whole side of his face. This abrupt awakening brought the coppery taste of blood in his mouth. A shattered gap remained where two upper molars used to be. His tongue moved in an attempt to push away the blood pooling up against his front teeth, but his jaw ached as it opened. Pins and needles shot down both of his arms as they hung vertically either side of his head. Bound wrists took the full weight of a 170-pound hanging male body. An industrial thick cable tie formed the shackles of his bondage and severed all feeling to his fingers. His eyes, forced open to complete darkness by these new sensations, slowly adjusted to the lack of light. He found that he was looking down at his feet. Lifting his head was a struggle, but with a squint he surveyed his surroundings. An image took shape, and the outline of a parked car formed in front of him. Light off to his left had helped to add definition to the vehicle, and it was this luminance that drew his attention. The light was coming from the gap along the bottom of a closed garage door at the far end of the room. A smaller door to the left gave an alternative entrance. To his right, an assortment of boxes was stacked on two rows of shelves, the tools of a decorator scattered in between various cardboard containers. Below the mayhem of the shelves was a workbench. Several shapes of varying sizes had been laid out in a neat line across it. Allowing his head to droop back down, he could make out a horse trough made of a stainless steel shining up at him through the poor light. He moved the toes of his right foot to see if he could reach the lip of the trough, but his foot found nothing. Trying to call out came to a swift end as the bones in his jaw creaked against each other. Pain that could not be described shot through his teeth. A cold sweat came up across his whole body, and a stream of bile forced its way up into his mouth. Gagging on stomach acid and wincing as the acid found the gap in his broken teeth, he managed to spit the fluid out under his chin. How the hell did I end up in this mess? His first recollection was of the rain, battering down onto the already drenched pavement with ferocity. Traipsing with his head bowed from the weather and shoulders hunched against the onslaught, Whitfield Creed worked his way through the puddles. A guitar case, which he considered to be his whole life, was slung over his back, drumming a tuneless rhythm as the heavy rain beat down on the black casing. Street scum had managed to soak up through a hole in his left shoe. New footwear had been a requirement for some time, but that required money, and the hole had been there longer than he could remember, so why should he let a little rainwater bother him? Various thoughts had been dancing around in his head, and had helped to distract him from the foul weather. His night's work had been the main item of consideration. When it came to gigs, it had been one of their better performances. The crowd had only started to pile out of the venue midway through the third song, as opposed to on the sound check, which was the normal reaction. They had all managed to hit every note and keep time. Delivery-wise, they were right on the mark, but the problem was they were too heavy-hitting and ear-splittingly loud for the mainstream crowds. Blaming the promoter for their poor venue choices was just glossing over the fact that the type of music they played just wasn't what people wanted to hear. What they played would always have an audience. It was just a matter of finding it. In truth, he didn't care whether the room was full, empty, or if he was sat alone, strumming to himself. For some inexplicable reason, the rain fell more heavily, battering the top of his skull through the mane of his hair. All considerations were washed away, and finding cover from the storm became his only concern. A poor-lit underpass loomed uninvitingly to his left. 24 small garage doors belonged to the high rise of flats above would have to do as shelter for the time being. With an extra spring in his step to get him out of the torrent, he walked under the cover of the tower block straight into a scene that seemed innocent enough. 2 cars were parked rear to rear, both with the engines running. Neither vehicle had its headlights on, but both had the lid of the trunk open. Whitfield hesitated, as the question of why both cars would have their engines running with the lights off gave him an unsure feeling. He had seen enough deals out the back of cars in his life to recognise what was going on, but he shook off the notion as walking through the underpass would cut minutes off his journey home. Casually he approached, keeping to the far side of the pathway in a hope to not get involved in their business. Such is the way in any major city the world over. But he was no fool. He knew that his tatty-looking clothes and long dreadlocked hair were not the look that suited walking up to people in the dark. Most had trouble with him in broad daylight. Why people acted that way towards him he had never been able to answer, but he had become accustomed to it over the years. A glance to his left as he got closer revealed that there were 2 men stood on the far side of each vehicle. Their voices were low as they held their conversation. Judging by their body language, they were in discussion about the contents of the trunks. Neither man appeared to notice Whitfield, but as he reached within line of the nearest trunk, the man facing him looked his way. This in turn made the other man hide his face behind his own upturned trunk. All he saw of the man was the pale white hand resting on the frame of a car, a large gold sovereign ring worn on the 3rd finger. A flicker of light caught on a law enforcement badge that hung from the first man's belt, and a bad feeling began to form in the pit of his stomach. Looking down into the officer's trunk, Whitfield noticed the content, and the sensation went from a feeling of outright sickness to a feeling of outright sickness. The lifeless eyes of a woman stared up towards the ceiling, and an open sports bag half full of money lay next to her head. His gaze moved from the horrific vision up to the man facing him, and their eyes met for the first time. A look of sad resignation formed across the officer's face. Understanding how bad a situation Whitfield had found himself in became apparent as the officer gave a nod to something over his shoulder. "I didn't see anything, amigos." Turning to flee, he moved just in time to catch the collapsible baton of a second officer across the right side of his chin. The force of the blow took him off his feet, and the feeling of floating consumed him as consciousness was beaten from him. There you go. That's the opening extracts of the night. It's not the full chapter. If you want to read the full chapter, like I said, it's available in the description. The link of the Night by Mark Simmons, available on Amazon through Poe Boy Publishing. Hope you enjoyed this, and I will be posting more in the near future. So, ciao for now.